The human fleet arrived at Zelthar Prime like a storm front moving across an ocean. The Zeltharian homeworld was a massive planet covered in red deserts and black cities, protected by orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Sam Turner stood on his flagship's bridge, looking down at the world where billions of Zeltharians lived their lives. 3 months ago, he had been a simple patrol commander protecting human shipping lanes. Now he commanded the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Dave Miller, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different planetary defense commanders. They're all asking for mercy." Sam wasn't surprised. Word of the Battle of Crimson Nebula had spread faster than light itself through the quantum communication networks. The complete destruction of Admiral Vex's fleet had shocked the galaxy. But Sam wasn't here for revenge against ordinary Zeltharians. "Open a channel to the planetary government," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Zeltharian High Council chamber. Dozens of four-armed aliens in ceremonial armor filled the room, but Sam could see the fear in their red eyes. "This is Admiral Sam Turner of the Human Space Defense Force," he said in a calm, steady voice. "We have come to discuss the return of our people and the future relationship between our species." Supreme Commander Zark, the leader of the Zeltharian Empire, stepped forward. His armor was more elaborate than the others, covered in symbols of conquest from 43 different worlds. "Admiral Turner," Supreme Commander Zark said, "we are prepared to negotiate the release of the human prisoners. Perhaps we can reach some arrangement." "There will be no negotiation," Sam replied firmly. "You will release all human prisoners immediately and withdraw all Zeltharian forces from human space. You will also surrender Admiral Vex to face trial for war crimes." Supreme Commander Zark's four arms spread wide in a gesture of defiance. "The Zeltharian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. We have planetary defenses that can destroy your entire fleet. We have ground forces numbering in the millions. We have held this world for 10,000 years. Sam nodded as if he had expected this response. "I understand your position. Let me show you mine." He gestured to his weapons officer, Commander Ellen Rice, a former cargo ship engineer who now controlled weapons that could reshape planets. "Commander Rice, please demonstrate our capabilities. Target the city of Korvac in the western desert." "Sir," Ellen said quietly, "Korvac has a population of 2 million civilians. Use minimal power setting," Sam clarified. "We want to make a point, not commit genocide." Ellen's fingers moved across her control panel with practiced efficiency. "Target acquired. Firing." From the human flagship, an energy beam lanced down toward the planet. It wasn't like any weapon the Zeltharians had ever seen. Instead of exploding like conventional bombs or burning like plasma cannons, this beam simply erased everything it touched. The city of Korvac, with its towering spires and industrial complexes, vanished in seconds. Where 2 million Zeltharians had lived and worked, there was now a perfectly smooth crater 5 miles across. The buildings, the roads, even the underground infrastructure, all gone as if they had never existed. But the people were gone too. The human weapon had somehow transported every living being in the city to safety before erasing their homes. 2 million confused Zeltharians found themselves standing in empty fields outside their former city, unharmed but homeless. The silence on both ships stretched for long minutes as the implications sank in. The humans possessed technology that could erase entire cities while somehow preserving every living thing inside them. "How?" Supreme Commander Zark whispered. "Dr. Ben Clark's research team made some interesting discoveries about the nature of matter and energy," Sam replied. "We can disassemble anything at the molecular level and move it anywhere we choose. Your city still exists. It's just been relocated to empty space between stars." The truth was more complex. The human scientists had discovered that when their species faced existential threats, they could somehow tap into technological insights that normally took millennia to develop. They didn't fully understand how it worked, but they knew it only happened when human children were threatened. "The people," Supreme Commander Zark said, still staring at the empty crater where a major city had stood just minutes before. "You saved the people." "We don't make war on civilians," Sam said simply. "That's the difference between us and you. Supreme Commander Zark looked around at his council members, then back at the human fleet hovering over his world. "What do you want?" "Justice," came a new voice from behind Sam. Captain Lisa Hayes walked onto the bridge, no longer a prisoner but wearing the uniform of a human naval officer. Behind her stood some of the colonists who had been enslaved by the Zeltharians. They had all volunteered to witness this moment. "Supreme Commander Zark," Lisa said, "3 months ago, your Admiral Vex murdered 50 of my people, including children, to make a point about strength. He enslaved 15,000 civilians for the crime of traveling through space." She activated a holographic display showing the faces of the 50 murdered colonists. Men, women, teenagers, elderly couples, all floating in space because they had refused to become property. "These people died because your empire believed that might makes right," Lisa continued, "that the strong can take whatever they want from the weak." Supreme Commander Zark stared at the faces in the hologram. For the first time in his long life, he truly understood what his empire had done to other species across the galaxy. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "Yes," Lisa agreed. "You were. The question now is what you're going to do about it." Before Supreme Commander Zark could reply, another presence made itself known. The bridge lights dimmed as Nexus, the ancient Void Keeper, materialized in the center of the room. His energy form pulsed with colors that spoke of vast age and deeper wisdom. "Admiral Turner," Nexus said, his voice like distant thunder, "may I speak privately with you?" Sam nodded to his bridge crew, who respectfully withdrew to give them space. Only Lisa remained, as one of the primary victims of Zeltharian aggression. "You have proven the old rule once again," Nexus said. "No species has ever made humans truly angry and survived unchanged, but I must tell you something that few know." The ancient being's form shifted to deeper, more somber colors. "Your species possesses a unique trait. When faced with existential threats, especially threats to your young, you don't just fight harder, you evolve. You transcend your previous limitations." "We noticed," Sam said dryly. "Our scientists made advances in 3 months that should have taken centuries." "It's more than that," Nexus continued. "Your tactical coordination, your technological breakthroughs, your ability to unite in the face of overwhelming odds, these abilities only emerge when human children are threatened. It's as if your entire species becomes something more than the sum of its parts." Lisa stepped forward. "Is that why the rule exists? Never make humans angry?" "The rule will need to be updated," Nexus replied. "For 10,000 years it was sufficient to warn species never to make humans angry. But your Admiral Vex crossed a different line. He threatened human children directly." The ancient being's form brightened slightly. "The new rule will be simpler and more absolute. Never threaten human children. Those who do will face not just human anger, but human transcendence." Sam looked out at the Zeltharian homeworld, where millions of beings waited to learn their fate. "What happens now?" "Now you choose," Nexus said. "You could destroy the Zeltharian Empire completely. Your technology is advanced enough. Your fleet is powerful enough, no one would blame you. Or," Lisa asked, "or you could do what humans do best. You could find a better way." Sam thought about the 50 murdered colonists, about the 15,000 enslaved civilians, about the children who had lived in terror for 3 months. Then he thought about the 2 million Zeltharians they had just relocated safely from their doomed city. "Open a channel to the Zeltharian government," he ordered. Supreme Commander Zark appeared on screen again, his forearms held in a position of submission. "The Zeltharian Empire will release all human prisoners immediately," Sam announced. "You will withdraw from all human space. Admiral Vex will be turned over to human authorities for trial." "Yes," Supreme Commander Zark agreed quickly. "All of this will be done. In addition," Sam continued, "the Zeltharian Empire will free all slaves taken from other species over the past century. You will provide reparations to the worlds you have conquered. You will transform from an empire of conquest to a civilization of trade and cooperation." The Zeltharian leader's eyes widened. "That would mean abandoning everything we have been for millennia." "Yes," Lisa said firmly. It would mean becoming something better. The Great Hall of Kepler Prime had not seen such worry in 800 years. Elder Zethkaran stood before the Galactic Council, his ancient form casting long 6 months later. Ambassador Jake Collins stood in the same council chamber on Kepler Prime, where this crisis had begun. But now he wore the uniform of human defense, force commander, and the seat assigned to humanity was no longer in the back row with the minor NCIL, with the power to veto any decision that threatened civilian. The UES Liberty appeared near the Valdari research station like a ghost materializing from empty space. The ship was ugly by galactic standards, all sharp angles, exposed machinery, and redundant systems bolted onto its hull. Where other species built elegant vessels that flowed like art through space, humans had built something that looked like it was ready for war. Captain Ben Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the alien station grow larger on his screens. 18 months had passed since President Rodriguez authorized Project Horizon. 18 months of sleepless nights, dangerous experiments, and 3 explosions that nearly destroyed half of Nevada. But they had done it. They had cracked faster than light travel using methods that would have horrified any reasonable species. Chief, how's our drive holding up? Hayes asked. Maria Gonzalez looked up from her engineering station, oil smudged across her face. Still in one piece, Captain. The quantum tunneling system is stable, the nuclear pulse drive is running clean, and the space-folding field generator hasn't exploded yet. Hayes nodded. The Liberty used 3 different FTL theories at the same time. Human scientists had argued for months about which approach was correct. Finally, Dr. Steve Miller had suggested they use all 3 together. The idea was insane. It violated every principle of careful engineering. Other species would never have attempted it. It worked perfectly. On the Valdari research station, Crethen was having the worst day of his long career. The appearance of an unknown ship had triggered every alarm on the station. But when his scanners analyzed the vessel, the results made no sense. The ship is using 3 different FTL systems simultaneously, his assistant reported, confusion clear in her voice. That should be impossible. The interference patterns alone should have torn the ship apart. Crethen studied the readings. He had spent 400 years studying faster-than-light physics. The human ship violated every rule he knew. Open communications, he ordered. Let's see who builds ships like this. Captain Hayes appeared on the station's main screen. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady blue eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration. What shocked Crethen was not the human's appearance, but his first words. This is Captain Hayes of the UES Liberty. I'm requesting permission to dock, technical specifications of your station systems, current star charts of local space, and information about joining the Galactic Council. I can provide Earth's complete technological database in exchange. Crethen's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. First contact protocols existed for a reason. New species were supposed to be nervous, careful, overwhelmed by meeting advanced civilizations. They were not supposed to immediately ask for technical data and political information. Captain Hayes, Crethen said carefully. Perhaps we should begin with introductions. I am Crethen of the Valdari Science Collective. We welcome you to our space. Thank you, Hayes replied. Now, about those technical specifications. The conversation that followed became legendary among the Valdari. Captain Hayes treated first contact like a business meeting. He asked direct questions, offered concrete trade proposals, and showed no interest in the careful diplomatic dance other species used. When Crethen explained that joining the Galactic Council required centuries of evaluation, Hayes asked for the specific requirements and began calculating how long it would take humanity to meet them. Your species would need to demonstrate technological maturity, social stability, and peaceful intentions, Crethen explained. Most species require several thousand years to qualify. Hayes nodded. So if we establish colonies in 50 systems, maintain peace for 100 years, and share our technology with other species, we could apply sooner. Theoretically, yes, but no species has ever. Crethen paused. The human was taking notes. Captain, surely you understand that reshaping an entire civilization takes time? Of course, Hayes agreed. We'll probably need at least 10 years, maybe 15 if we run into problems. Back on Earth, Admiral Nicole Peterson was having similar conversations with her staff. The Joint Chiefs of Staff were learning that planning for first contact with aliens meant planning for war. Not because humans wanted war, but because humans always prepared for the worst possible outcome. The alien ships we've observed use energy shields and directed energy weapons, she explained to the assembled officers. They appear to follow rules of engagement that minimize casualties. Their ships are built for elegance and efficiency. General Robert Kim raised his hand. What's our response? Peterson smiled grimly. We build ships that can take massive damage and keep fighting. We design weapons that win battles quickly and decisively. We assume that any aliens we meet might eventually become enemies, and we prepare accordingly. The room was quiet. These were professional soldiers, but the idea of preparing for interstellar war was overwhelming. Admiral, asked General Susan Lee, what if they don't want to fight? What if they're peaceful? Then we'll be the most peaceful species in the galaxy, Peterson replied. But we'll be peaceful because we're strong enough that nobody wants to test us. The human military buildup began immediately. Unlike other species that developed new technologies over centuries, humans applied their entire industrial capacity to the problem. Factories that had been building cars began building spaceship parts. Scientists who had been studying climate change began studying alien technology. The entire planet focused on a single goal, making sure humanity could defend itself among the stars. Dr. Steve Miller led the reverse engineering effort. The Liberty had recorded everything during its encounter with the Valduri station. Within weeks, human scientists were analyzing alien power systems, computer networks, and manufacturing techniques. Where other species took centuries to understand new technologies, human teams worked around the clock, sharing failures as quickly as successes. The key is parallel development, Miller explained to his exhausted staff. We don't need to understand why their technology works. We just need to understand how to make it work better. The approach horrified alien observers. Humans were taking advanced technologies and immediately trying to improve them. They combined alien techniques with human methods, creating hybrid systems that were often more effective than the originals. Captain Hayes completed his mission after 3 days at the Valduri station. He left with detailed star charts, technological samples, and a complete understanding of galactic politics. Crythan watched the Liberty disappear into space, feeling deeply unsettled. The human ship had appeared from nowhere, gathered intelligence with shocking efficiency, and left with promises to return soon with more ships. Crythan had lived for 600 years and had never encountered anything like it. He immediately sent a message to the Galactic Council. The message was simple. The humans are not what we expected. They learn too quickly, adapt too fast, and ask too many dangerous questions. We may have a problem. The Council filed the report with thousands of others. They were busy managing the affairs of 12 civilizations across thousands of worlds. The concerns of one research station about one primitive species seemed unimportant. They would realize their mistake within months. By then, human ships would be appearing throughout the galaxy, and Captain Hayes' 3-day visit would be remembered as the beginning of humanity's rise to power. The Valduri research station returned to its normal routine, but Crythan found himself watching the stars differently. Somewhere out there, the humans were building more ships, learning more about the galaxy, and preparing for whatever came next. Elder Zethkaran had been right. The humans were coming, and they were nothing like any species the galaxy had ever encountered. 2 years after the Liberty's first journey, the galaxy was beginning to notice humanity. Human ships appeared in star systems across the outer rim with disturbing frequency. They came not as conquerors or diplomats, but as something the galaxy had never seen before: entrepreneurs. Captain Ryan Clark guided his merchant ship New Frontier through the asteroid field surrounding Proxima Station. The space station belonged to the Karathi, a species of careful traders who had spent centuries building their reputation for fair dealing. Clark had been trading with them for 6 months, and the relationship confused everyone involved. "Captain Clark," came the voice of Station Master Keltar over the communication system. "Your cargo manifest shows you're carrying Earth music files, human literature, and something called movies, along with your usual technology samples. These items have no practical value." Clark grinned. At 35, he was young for a starship captain, but he understood something about humans that most aliens missed. "Keltar, my friend, you're thinking too small. Those entertainment files are worth more than the technology." "How can stories be worth more than functioning devices?" "Because stories change how people think. And once someone starts thinking like a human, they start wanting human things." Clark was right. Across the galaxy, alien species were discovering human entertainment. They watched movies about humans who never gave up, who fought impossible odds, who achieved great things through determination and sacrifice. They listened to music that spoke of dreams, love, loss, and hope. They read books about humans who explored unknown worlds and built better societies. The cultural impact was enormous. Young aliens began questioning why their species accepted limitations that humans would challenge. They started asking why development had to take centuries when humans accomplished the same things in decades. They began to dream bigger. On the Rigel system's 4th planet, Amanda Foster stood on a hill overlooking New Houston, humanity's first major colony outside Earth's solar system. The planet was barely habitable, high radiation, toxic atmosphere, and gravity 30% higher than Earth normal. Any sane species would have spent centuries terraforming it before attempting settlement. Humans had simply adapted. The colonists wore radiation suits when working outside, lived in sealed domes, and used genetic treatments to help their bodies handle the gravity. At the same time, they were reshaping the planet with typical human impatience. Massive atmosphere. Processors worked day and night to reduce the toxicity. Orbital mirrors focused sunlight to warm the polar regions. Nuclear devices detonated deep underground to restart the planet's magnetic field. "Status report," Foster said to her assistant, a young man named Pete Jackson. "Population is up to 50,000. Jackson replied, consulting his tablet. "The southern continent atmosphere processors are ahead of schedule. We should have breathable air at ground level within 3 years instead of 10. Foster nodded. The timeline would have shocked alien terraforming experts. Most species planned planetary modification projects that took millennia. Humans planned for decades and accepted the risks. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" she asked. Jackson's expression darkened. "They sent another formal request for us, to slow our expansion until they can evaluate our cultural impact on established galactic society." Foster laughed. "And our response?" "Ambassador Bell sent them our standard reply. We're happy to work with them, but we're not stopping our expansion." Plans. The Galactic Council was finally taking notice. Elder Zeth Karen stood once again before the assembled representatives, but this time his warnings carried more weight. Human trade ships were everywhere. Human colonies were appearing on worlds other species had deemed unsuitable. Human entertainment was spreading through the galaxy like a virus, changing how younger generations thought about limits and possibilities. In 3 years, they have achieved what most species accomplish in 3 centuries, Zeth Karen said. They have established formal trade relationships with 47 different species. They have colonies in 12 systems. Their cultural exports are creating unrest among the younger generations of multiple civilizations. Commander Veltar was no longer dismissive. "Our intelligence reports confirm the Elder's assessment. The humans are spreading faster than any species in recorded history. But what concerns our military analysts is not their expansion rate, it's their methods." The commander activated a holographic display showing human colony ships. They don't terraform planets and then settle them. They settle hostile worlds and terraform them simultaneously. They accept casualty rates that would be unthinkable to our species. And they're building infrastructure at a pace that suggests they're preparing for much larger populations. The crystalline representative chimed anxiously. "Our economists cannot understand their trade practices. They freely share technological advances. They treat entertainment as a strategic resource. They offer military protection to species they barely know. None of this follows established patterns. What the Council didn't understand was that humans weren't following alien patterns. They were creating their own. Ambassador Karen Bell arrived at the Galactic Council chambers aboard the UES Constitution, humanity's newest and most impressive ship. Unlike earlier human vessels, the Constitution was built to make a statement. It was enormous, heavily armed, and beautiful in a way that combined human engineering with aesthetic lessons learned from contact with dozens of alien cultures. Bell herself was impressive. A former diplomat and military officer, she understood both negotiation and power. She entered the council chambers not as a supplicant seeking approval, but as a representative of an equal power seeking formal recognition. "Honored council members," she began, "I present humanity's formal application for membership in the Galactic Council." She placed a crystal data storage device on the central table. "This contains complete documentation of our achievements, our territorial claims, our trade agreements with 73 species, and our proposed contributions to galactic defense and development." Commander Veltar shifted uncomfortably. "Ambassador Bell, the process of council membership typically requires extensive evaluation over several centuries. No species has ever applied so soon after achieving interstellar capability." Bell smiled. "Commander, humanity is not like other species. We don't wait for permission to exist. We act, and we deal with consequences. We would prefer to work within the Council's framework, but we will continue our expansion and development with or without official recognition." The statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. New species were supposed to seek guidance from their elders. They were supposed to be grateful for any attention from established civilizations. They were not supposed to calmly state that they would proceed regardless of what the galaxy's most powerful beings decided. "That sounds suspiciously like a threat," the Voidwalker representative observed. "Not a threat," Bell corrected. "A statement of fact. Humanity has plans. Those plans include continued expansion, continued technological development, and continued cultural exchange with species throughout the galaxy. We believe these goals align with the Council's stated objectives of peace, prosperity, and progress. But if the Council chooses to oppose these goals," she shrugged, "we will achieve them anyway." Elder Zethkaran watched the exchange with growing alarm. This was exactly what he had feared. Humanity was not seeking to join the galactic community. They were informing it that they had already joined and were now seeking formal recognition of accomplished facts. "Ambassador," he said carefully, "surely you understand that the Council must consider the impact of such rapid change on galactic stability." Bell turned to face the ancient being. "Elder, with respect, stability is not the same as stagnation. The galaxy has been stable for 800 years, but what has it achieved? What great works have been built? What new frontiers have been explored? What problems have been solved?" She gestured to the holographic displays showing human colonies and trade routes. "In 3 years, humanity has established profitable relationships with species that had been isolated for centuries. We've made hostile worlds habitable. We've shared technologies freely and benefited everyone involved. We've created entertainment that brings joy to billions of beings. How is this destabilizing?" The Council had no answer. From their perspective, humans were changing too much too quickly, but they couldn't argue that the changes were harmful. Debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Council voted to postpone the decision pending further evaluation. Bell accepted this gracefully, knowing that the delay would only demonstrate humanity's continued growth and success. As she left the chambers, Bell carried with her the knowledge that humanity had crossed a crucial threshold. They were no longer asking for permission to exist in the galaxy. They were informing it that they belonged there. The real test would come soon enough. The Galactic Council's decision to test humanity came 6 months after Ambassador Bell's presentation. Commander Veltar had convinced the other members that humans needed to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. The plan was simple: organize a trade embargo that would force humanity to negotiate from a position of weakness. They are still new to interstellar commerce. Veltar explained to the assembled council. Cut off their trade routes, and they will quickly realize they need our approval to succeed. Once they understand their dependence on our goodwill, they will be more cooperative. Elder Zethkaren had argued against the plan, but his warnings were dismissed once again. The council authorized the Hegemony Alliance to organize a coordinated embargo against human trade. 70% of the galaxy's major trading species agreed to participate. President Rodriguez received the news in the Oval Office from Admiral Kevin Torres, the new head of the Space Command. Sir, we're seeing coordinated trade disruptions across 40 systems. Ships that were buying our goods last week are now refusing to respond to communications. It's clearly organized. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, studying the star map that showed human trade routes in red and the embargo participants in blue. Admiral, how long can our colonies survive without external trade? With current supplies, about 8 months, Torres replied. Less if we continue expanding at our current rate. The president stood up and walked to the window. Outside, construction crews were working on the new Space Command headquarters, a massive complex that would coordinate humanity's growing interstellar presence. Admiral, I want you to activate Operation Independence. Full implementation. Torres smiled grimly. Yes, sir, all protocols? All protocols. And send a message to Dr. Jennifer Kim. Tell her I need the Prometheus project operational in 3 months instead of 6. Operation Independence was humanity's contingency plan for exactly this situation. Human planners had studied alien trade patterns and realized that the galaxy's economy depended on everyone following established rules. What would happen if one species simply ignored those rules entirely? Within days, human ships began appearing in previously neutral systems, setting up independent trading posts and mining operations. Captain Danny Williams led the first wave, aboard the UES Defiant, a new class of ship designed specifically for independent operations. Unlike earlier human vessels, the Defiant carried complete manufacturing facilities, allowing it to operate without external support for months at a time. Captain, reported his second officer, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, we're receiving protests from the Karathi Commercial Guild. They're claiming we're violating their exclusive trading rights in this system. Williams consulted his orders. Lieutenant, according to my information, this system is unclaimed space. Are we interfering with any of their operations? No, sir. We're mining asteroids they considered worthless and trading with species they had no contact with. Then we continue operations. Send a polite message explaining that we're not violating any agreements we've signed. This was humanity's strategy. They hadn't signed the trade agreements that gave various species exclusive rights to different systems. While alien civilizations spent centuries negotiating complex territorial divisions, humans simply went wherever they wanted and established their own operations. The approach infuriated the established powers. Commander Veltar found himself dealing with complaints from dozens of species who suddenly faced human competition in systems they had considered their exclusive territory. They're everywhere, complained the Karathi Guild representative. Our scouts report human mining operations in 6 systems we considered worthless. Now those systems are producing more rare metals than our best territories. How is that possible? Veltar demanded. They use mining techniques we would consider insanely dangerous. They detonate nuclear devices inside asteroids to break them apart, then use automated systems to collect the fragments. They accept equipment losses we would find unacceptable. This was the pattern throughout human space, where other species carefully planned operations to minimize risk and maximize efficiency. Humans planned for controlled disasters and overwhelming capacity. Their ships were built to be repaired quickly rather than to never break down. Their mining operations produced enormous amounts of material by accepting high equipment costs. Their manufacturing systems prioritized speed and volume over precision and elegance. The crisis escalated when Hegemony Admiral Kexathul decided to enforce the embargo through military action. He led a fleet of 60 ships to blockade New Terra, humanity's largest colony outside the Sol system. His plan was simple: demonstrate overwhelming force and force the humans to negotiate. Colony Administrator Paul Johnson received the Hegemony ultimatum while having morning coffee in his office. overlooking New Terra's capital city. The message was polite but clear. Evacuate all human personnel within 72 hours or face military action. Johnson's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. He sent a single-word reply: no. When Admiral Kexethol demanded an explanation, Johnson's second message was longer but equally direct. Admiral, this is human space. We built this colony, we live here, and we will defend it. If you wish to discuss trade arrangements, we welcome diplomatic contact. If you wish to threaten our people, you are no longer welcome in our territory. The message included detailed scans of New Terra's defenses. The hegemony fleet found itself facing something they had never encountered: a civilian colony armed with military-grade weapons that violated several galactic treaties, orbital defense platforms, ground-based missile systems, and automated defense drones surrounded the planet. Sir, reported Kexthol's tactical officer, the humans have enough firepower to seriously damage our fleet. Their defensive systems use technologies we've never seen before. Kexthol studied the sensor readings. How did a civilian colony acquire such weapons? Sir, I don't think they distinguish between civilian and military installations the way we do. Every human colony we've observed has similar defenses. The Admiral was facing the reality of human military philosophy. Other species built dedicated military bases and kept civilian areas lightly defended. Humans assumed that anyone who wanted to hurt them would target their most valuable assets: their homes, their families, their civilian populations. Therefore, civilian areas received the best defenses. When the battle began, it shocked both sides. The hegemony fleet attacked with careful precision, targeting specific military installations while avoiding civilian casualties. The human response was overwhelming and brutal. Every defensive system fired simultaneously. Civilian ships evacuated. Non-essential personnel while mining equipment was weaponized and turned against the attackers. Admiral Rebecca Santos arrived with the human relief fleet just as the battle reached its peak. Her force was smaller than the hegemony fleet, but it fought with tactics that horrified alien observers. Human ships rammed enemy vessels when their weapons were damaged. Captains ordered suicide runs against superior opponents. Crews continued, fighting even when their ships were crippled and leaking atmosphere. Admiral Santos, came an urgent message from one of her captains. The Defiant has lost life support and weapons, but Captain Williams is requesting permission to ram the hegemony command ship. Santos didn't hesitate. Permission granted. All ships, cover the Defiant's approach. The sight of a damaged human ship accelerating toward certain destruction while its crew cheered over open communications channels broke the hegemony fleet's morale. These aliens had expected a civilized battle with reasonable objectives. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that treated death as an acceptable tactical option. When Admiral Kexthul finally ordered retreat, his fleet had lost 36 ships while the humans had lost 18. But the numbers didn't tell the real story. The hegemony had lost ships because their crews panicked when facing human tactics. The humans had lost ships because their crews had deliberately sacrificed themselves to achieve victory. The battle's aftermath sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Elder Zethkaran called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, his warnings now carrying the weight of demonstrated fact. You tested them, he said simply. You tried to force them to submit through economic pressure and military intimidation. How did they respond? Commander Veltar was no longer arrogant. They ignored our economic sanctions and fought our military forces to a standstill using tactics we cannot counter. Now, do you understand? Humans do not recognize the concept of acceptable losses. They do not fight to win battles, they fight to eliminate threats. They do not seek to be part of the galactic community. They seek to reshape it according to their own vision. The council chamber was silent. The test had revealed something they had not expected. Humanity was not seeking acceptance. They were announcing their arrival as equals, and they were prepared to fight anyone who disagreed. The galaxy would never be the same. 5 years after first contact, President Michelle Davis stood in the newly constructed Galactic Affairs Center in Geneva, looking at a star map that showed human influence spreading across known space. 300 human colonies dotted the display, connected by trade routes that had become the galaxy's new economic backbone. What amazed her most was not how much humanity had achieved, but how much the galaxy had changed around them. "Madam President," said Secretary of State John Martinez, approaching with the latest intelligence reports, "we're receiving requests for military assistance from 14 different species. The Coralli are asking for help with pirates. The Voidwalkers want our support in a territorial dispute. Even the Crystalline Collective is requesting human advisors for their defense planning." Davis nodded. In 5 short years, humanity had become what Elder Zeth Karen had feared, the galaxy's dominant military power. Not because they had conquered anyone, but because everyone else had learned they needed human protection. Captain Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Enterprise, humanity's first dreadnought-class vessel. The ship was enormous, carrying enough firepower to level a planet, but its real purpose was diplomatic. The Enterprise served as the flagship for the Human Defense Fleet, a force that now protected over 40 different species across the galaxy. "Captain," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's marked Project Deep Scan." Parker frowned. Project Deep Scan was humanity's early warning system, a network of sensors and monitoring stations designed to watch for threats from outside the galaxy. If they were sending priority communications, something was very wrong. The message was brief but terrifying. Long-range sensors had detected a massive fleet approaching from outside the galaxy. The ships used technology unlike anything in the galactic database. Their trajectory and speed suggested they would arrive within months, not years. Dr. Ashley Brown received the same message in her laboratory on Luna Station. As humanity's lead researcher in exotic physics, she had been working on theoretical projects that most species would consider impossible. The approaching fleet meant those theoretical projects needed to become reality very quickly. "Director," said her assistant, a young scientist named Mike Chen, "if these readings are correct, we're looking at a fleet of over 10,000 ships. Each one appears to be larger than anything in our current database." Brown studied the sensor data. "They're not using hyperspace drives or quantum tunneling. The energy signatures suggest they're actually folding space-time around their ships. That should require massive amounts of energy." "How massive?" "Each ship would need the power output of a small star just to maintain flight. That means they're either incredibly advanced or—" She paused, understanding hitting her like a physical blow. "Mike, run the calculations again. But this time, assume they're not ships." Minutes later, the results confirmed her worst fear. The approaching fleet wasn't a collection of vessels. It was a swarm of artificial intelligences, each one housed in a structure the size of a small moon. They were the Devourers, a machine intelligence from another galaxy that consumed entire star systems to fuel their expansion. The Galactic Council's emergency session was chaos. Representatives screamed, argued, and demanded impossible solutions. Some species wanted to negotiate with the approaching threat. Others suggested hiding in the galaxy's outer regions. The Crystalline Collective proposed abandoning physical form entirely and existing as pure energy. Elder Zethkaran listened to the panic with growing sadness. These beings had ruled the galaxy for centuries through careful diplomacy and slow consensus building. Faced with an existential threat that required immediate action, they were paralyzed. President Davis's response was typically human. Within hours of receiving the threat assessment, she had authorized full military mobilization and activated every contingency plan in the human arsenal. Admiral Tony Rodriguez found himself commanding the largest military force in galactic history. "Admiral," Davis said during their emergency briefing, "I'm giving you complete authority over human military assets. I'm also authorizing the Genesis Protocol." Rodriguez paused. The Genesis Protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret. The ability to create new star systems by seeding space with artificial stellar formation triggers. It was technology that could reshape the galaxy itself, but using it would reveal capabilities that even friendly aliens might find threatening. "Madam President, are you certain? Once we reveal Genesis, there's no going back. Every species in the galaxy will know we can create or destroy star systems at will. Davis looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer fleet. Admiral, if we don't stop them, there won't be a galaxy left to worry about. Fraste. Battle for the galaxy began in the Outer Rim, where human early warning stations first detected Devourer scout ships. Captain Luis Morales commanded the defense station at Proxima Outpost, a small facility that monitored deep space. When the first Devourer probe arrived, his crew of 12 faced a machine intelligence the size of a battleship. All stations. This is Proxima Outpost, Morales broadcast on all frequencies. We are engaging hostile contact. Enemy capabilities exceed all known parameters. Recommend immediate fleet deployment to Sector 7. The battle was brief and hopeless. The Devourer probe consumed the outpost and its entire crew in minutes. But Morales had accomplished his mission. The galaxy now knew the enemy had arrived. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Rodriguez deployed every available ship to establish defensive lines throughout human space. But more importantly, he activated the civilian evacuation protocol that had been planned since humanity's first days in space. General Patricia Moore coordinated the largest evacuation in galactic history. Using the newly revealed Genesis protocol, human engineering teams began creating new star systems in previously empty regions of space. Entire populations were relocated to these artificial systems while the military held defensive lines. General, reported her logistics coordinator, we're moving over 2 billion beings per day to the Genesis systems. The new stars are stabilizing, ahead of schedule, and the planetary formation process is exceeding all projections. Moore nodded grimly. How long until the Devourers reach the core systems? At current advance rates, 6 months. Then we need to hold for 6 months while evacuating 12 billion people across 400 systems. She paused, considering the magnitude of the task. We're going to need help. The help came from an unexpected source, the other species of the galaxy. Faced with extinction, the careful diplomatic protocols that had governed interspecies relations for centuries disappeared overnight. The Valdari offered their most advanced sensors. The Karathi provided their fastest ships for evacuation duty. Even the isolationist Voidwalkers shared their stealth technology. But it was the younger generations of alien species who made the real difference. Raised on human entertainment and inspired by human examples, they volunteered for dangerous missions that their elders would never have considered. Young crystalline warriors learned human tactics. Valdari scientists worked alongside human engineers on impossible projects. Karathi merchants donated their entire fleets to the evacuation effort. The final battle took place in the Sol system, where Admiral Rodriguez had concentrated the combined fleets of 30 species around Earth's solar system. The defending force included over 5,000 ships, but they faced a Devourer fleet 10 times larger. Captain Joey Martinez commanded the USS Independence, one of the new Genesis-class ships equipped with stellar manipulation technology. His mission was simple in concept and impossible in execution. Use the Genesis protocol to weaponize Sol itself. Captain, reported his science officer, we've successfully destabilized the star's outer layers. The solar flare will propagate throughout the system within 10 minutes. Martinez watched the tactical display as Devourer ships entered the solar system. They came in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had consumed thousands of civilizations across multiple galaxies. Nothing had ever stopped them. They had never encountered humans. The artificial solar flare that erupted from Sol carried more energy than most species used in a century. It washed over the Devourer fleet like a tide of destruction, overloading their systems and disrupting their coordination. In that moment of chaos, the combined galactic fleet struck with everything they had. The battle raged for days. Ships died in their hundreds. Heroes were made and forgotten in minutes. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The Devourers had expected to face typical organic resistance, careful, defensive, focused on survival. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had turned an entire star into a weapon and treated the destruction of their homeworld as an acceptable tactical loss. When the last Devourer ship fell silent, the galaxy had won its greatest victory. But the cost had been enormous. Earth was uninhabitable. Dozens of systems had been evacuated. Millions of beings had died in the fighting. Elder Zethkaran stood in the ruins of the old Galactic Council chamber, looking out at the stars. The council itself had been dissolved during the